The desert wind howled like a mourning widow, sweeping fine grains of sand across the city gates of Waset, the proud capital of ancient Kemet. Just beyond its golden pillars and lotus-carved archways, where the guards turned blind eyes and nobles rode past without care, a motionless body lay slumped in the heat. Her name was Nafraya, barely 16, daughter of a scribe and once betrothed to a merchant's son. Now her dress was torn, her lips cracked from thirst, and her arms wrapped tightly around her trembling belly. She had been accused of betrayal, a false charge hurled by her cousin, a jealous girl who coveted the same future. The elders had not listened. No trial, no questions, only a verdict. "Take her out," they said. "Let the sands decide her guilt." And so, at dawn, she was dragged beyond the city's sacred perimeter, where criminals and cursed souls were left for the sun to finish. But Nafraya was no criminal, only a girl whose voice was too soft in a world ruled by the loud and the cruel. As the sun rose higher, blinding and merciless, jackals circled at a distance, waiting. Nafraya whispered prayers to God she wasn't sure still listened. Her body trembled, not from the cold, but from knowing no one was coming. But fate, unpredictable and ancient, still had one move left. Just before the second sundial marked midday, a figure appeared on the horizon, tall, cloaked, bow slung across his back. He moved like shadow and heat, cautious but certain. A desert hunter named Menmaatre, returning from a solitary hunt in the dunes, his sandals worn from weeks of walking and his eyes sharp from reading the whispers of the land. He spotted her form, half buried in sand, barely breathing. He should have kept walking after all. In the desert, death was common, and strangers brought trouble. But something in her eyes, open, glassy, yet still defiant, stopped him. He knelt beside her, pressed a wet cloth to her lips, and whispered, "You're not dying today." The winds shifted. The jackals retreated. And with steady arms, he lifted her like a bundle of reeds and began the long walk back, not to the city that abandoned her, but to a camp hidden deep among the palms, where exile was no curse, and strangers could still be saved. Menmaatre's feet moved swiftly over the burning sand, carrying the frail weight of Nafraya in his arms. Each step was deliberate, guided by memory and instinct. He didn't look back at Waset's towering skyline. He had left that world behind long ago. The city had once embraced him, a skilled tracker who served nobles and priests, but envy and politics turned admiration to suspicion. When he refused to frame an innocent boy for a temple theft, they branded him disloyal. Exiled and dishonored, he disappeared into the dunes, taking only his bow, his silence, and his oath to never trust cities again. Nafraya stirred slightly, her breath shallow but present. Her face was sunburnt, lashes clumped from dried tears, and her dress was stained with blood and dust. Still, Menmaatre saw her not as broken, but betrayed, cast out like him, by the same city that rewarded cruelty over truth. By dusk, they reached the edge of an oasis hidden between jagged cliffs and thick palms. Here, where papyrus grew and birds called softly in the reeds, he had built a quiet life, an adobe hut near a spring, traps set for wild hares, and medicinal herbs drying on woven mats. As he laid her down on a cot of palm leaves, he whispered, "You'll live, too." The nights in the desert were cold, but his fire warmed the room. He crushed dates into a paste and fed her with his hands, then applied crushed aloe and powdered myrrh to her wounds. Days passed like slow water. She didn't speak, but her eyes followed him. She watched how he moved with care, quiet, strong, and patient like the land itself. On the fourth day, she whispered her name, Nafraya. Her voice cracked like an old scroll, but it held weight. He nodded, saying only, Menmaatre. No questions, no pity. In the following days, she sat up. Her bruises faded. Her silence softened. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the date palms swayed, she asked, Why did you help me? Menmaatre didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, Because no one helped me. And in that moment, among the reeds in the firelight, something unspoken passed between them. Not love, not yet, but understanding, stitched together by survival and silence. Nafraya's body had healed faster than her heart. Though her wounds had scabbed over and the swelling had faded, she often awoke gasping, clutching her chest as if drowning in invisible waters. Each morning she sat by the spring, staring at her reflection as if trying to recognize the girl who once wore silks and laughed in sunlit courtyards. Menmaatre never interrupted. He worked around her fletching arrows, tending to a goat or grinding herbs. Yet, without a word, he always left a warm bowl of lentils beside her. She never thanked him, but never let the food go cold either. By the seventh morning, her voice returned with strength. They left me, she said, gazing into the water. My own family. I was to marry Rehut, son of a merchant. But my cousin claimed I met with a priest in secret. A lie, but no one questioned her. My father said it was shame enough that I was accused. Her fingers dug into the sand. They dragged me out before sunrise. My aunt turned her face. My brother didn't even cry. Menmaatre listened in silence, sitting cross-legged nearby. Waset devours its own, he murmured, not with bitterness, but with ancient weariness. You are not the first to cast out, nor will you be the last. Nafraya turned toward him, studying the shadows under his eyes, the lines etched by wind and time. And you, who left you behind? She asked. He gave a tired smile. The city asked me to lie. I refused. That was enough. That night, they sat beside the fire together. She watched him carefully blend herbs into a clay pot. You make heat potions? She asked. I learned from desert priests. And from the land. He glanced at her. Would you learn? The offer stunned her. In Waset, daughters were taught music, embroidery, and obedience, not medicine. She nodded slowly. Yes, teach me. And so began her apprenticeship, not of ceremony, but of survival. She learned the names of roots, the sting of crushed garlic, the power of blue lotus. She wrapped wounds with linen strips, boiled salves until the air smelled of earth and flame. In healing others, she began to rebuild herself, not just as a girl once betrayed, but as a woman who would never again be voiceless. Weeks passed like drifting sand. Nafraya's hands grew steady, her eyes sharp. Where once she trembled at shadows, she now lit the evening fire with confidence, tended to wounds with skill, and named herbs without hesitation. Menmaatre watched with quiet pride, though he said little. Yet even in peace, the desert held secrets, and one of them lived beneath his skin. One night, While she sorted dried hibiscus petals, Nafraya noticed the faint scar on his side, an old mark, curved like a serpent, barely visible under his robe. "That was no hunting wound," she said softly. He didn't look up. "No," he admitted. "That was the blade of a city guard." She sat beside him, the air heavy with waiting. Finally, he spoke. "I once served the House of Life. I walked the corridors of the temple libraries. I studied healing, poisons, antidotes. When a young priest's son fell ill, they claimed it was an enemy's curse. But I found the truth. It was the sacred ink used in his initiation, tainted. I told the truth." His jaw tightened. "They silenced me. Exile was mercy. They wanted me gone, not dead." Nafraya stared into the fire. "And you saved me when no one else would." He met her gaze. "Because the truth must be protected, even when no one believes it." In that quiet, surrounded by the crackle of flames and the rustle of reeds, they were no longer hunter and healed. They were two exiles cast out by the same machine, bound by wounds the city had carved into them. The next morning a traveler arrived, an old woman with swollen knees and a cough thick as the Nile. She had heard whispers of a healer in the hidden oasis. Nafraya helped prepare the salves, boiled water, rubbed the woman's chest with oils Menmaatre taught her to mix. The woman called her Little Priestess, and Nafraya smiled for the first time in weeks. That evening, as she cleaned the empty bowls, Menmaatre handed her a staff carved from desert wood. "You've earned it," he said. She ran her hand over the smooth grain, tears stinging her eyes. For the first time, she felt not rescued, but chosen. And in the hush of twilight, the hunter's secret had become her foundation. In the heart of the oasis, life flourished like a forgotten prayer. More travelers began to arrive, an injured stonemason from the western cliffs, a mother with a feverish child, even a blind musician whose voice had gone hoarse. Word of a healer hidden in the sands spread from caravan to caravan, reaching ears in far corners of the desert. Nafraya, once discarded, now stood beside Menmaatre like a priestess of renewal, her touch bringing relief, her voice steady with knowledge. But not all ears were kind. In the market alleys of Waset, a merchant overheard a spice trader boast of a girl who healed like a priest and bore the eyes of a noble. The description was too precise to ignore. The merchant, a cousin of Nafraya's once betrothed, returned home with furrowed brows and stories coiled like snakes in his throat. That night, her father sat by the oil lamp in silence, listening as the truth clawed its way back to him. Guilt, like a silent tide, began to rise. Meanwhile, Nafraya gathered water from the spring, unaware that the city was beginning to murmur again. She wore a simple linen dress now, her hair woven in a single braid tied with a reed string. She no longer looked like the girl thrown to the sands. Her step was grounded, her gaze direct. Yet part of her still trembled when she thought of Waset, its walls rising like cold judgment in her memory. Menmaatre, always observant, noticed her stillness. "They will come," he said one evening, "not because they miss you, but because they fear what truth survives in the desert." She met his eyes. "Let them come. I am not who they left behind." Later that week, a group of riders passed near the edge of the oasis. From behind a dune, Nafraya saw the crested helmet of Waset's guards and the purple sash of a nobleman. Her breath caught. They didn't enter. only paused, scanned the landscape, and rode on. But their presence carved a new urgency in the wind. That night, Nafraya stood alone under the stars. "If they return," she whispered, "I will not run. Not this time." The desert had not only saved her, it had forged her. And the city that once condemned her would soon see what it had buried alive. At sunrise, Menmaatre returned from his morning patrol with a hardened look in his eyes. In his hand was a torn piece of linen embroidered with the falcon seal of Waset's temple scribes. "Someone came close in the night," he said grimly. "Too close." Nafraya examined the fabric, her jaw tightening. The falcon seal was unmistakable. It marked the inner circles of temple scholars, a group that prized silence over truth and vengeance over justice. Later that day, while tending to a child with desert fever, Nafraya found a scroll hidden beneath a clay jar outside the hut. It was wrapped in oilskin, protected from the wind, and marked with her birth name in delicate hieroglyphs. Her hands trembled as she unrolled it. Inside was a message: "Return and clear your name, or stay and bear the shame. A trial awaits. The elders demand the truth." Below the text was a symbol etched in crimson, an eye weeping over the scales of Ma'at. She took it to Menmaatre, who studied it in silence. "It's bait," he said finally. "The city doesn't seek justice. It seeks silence. If you return, they'll cleanse their guilt by blaming you again." But Nafraya's mind was not ruled by fear anymore. "Then let them hear my truth," she replied. "Let them see what their shame looks like alive and unbroken." That evening, she prepared herself. She dressed not in fine silks, but in her healer's robe, worn linen dyed with desert herbs. She braided her hair tightly, slid her reed staff into her sash, and wrapped the falcon seal linen around her hand. She would return not as the weeping girl they abandoned, but as the woman they feared she might become. Menmaatre stepped forward. "If you go with my name beside you." He pressed a ring into her palm, carved with the mark of the House of Life. "This proves you studied under me, that you are no servant, but a practitioner of sacred healing." The next morning, they departed together, hunter and healer, shadows of exile walking side by side toward the city that once spat them into the sand. The desert winds whispered around them, not with sorrow, but with quiet anticipation. Waset would remember the name Nafraya, and it would tremble. The gates of Waset loomed like a beast waking from slumber-stone lions flanking the entrance, their jaws agape, as if ready to devour the returning exiles. The guards stiffened when they saw the pair approach. Nafraya, eyes calm, lifted the scroll and Menmaatre's ring high. "Summon the elders," she declared. "We come by order of Ma'at." The name of the goddess of truth could not be ignored. The guards exchanged glances and reluctantly parted. Inside, the city felt unchanged, too clean, too quiet, its walls whispering betrayal. Nobles in white linen passed by with turned faces. Market vendors paused, their voices caught in their throats as they recognized the girl once cast into the dunes. Whispers followed her like shadows. "She lives? Is that really Nafraya?" They said she was cursed. But she walked tall, her staff tapping against the polished stone with each step. The elders convened in the Hall of Judgment, 7 old men seated beneath painted images of Anubis and Thoth. Her father sat among them, thinner now, his eyes heavy with regret. Nafraya stood at the center, Menmaatre behind her, like a silent wall. The lead elder, face tight with discomfort, gestured. "You return of your own will." "Why?" "To answer a lie," she said. "To face what the city feared, a woman with truth." Gasps echoed. No woman had ever addressed the council so directly. One elder leaned forward. "And who speaks for your innocence?" Menmaatre stepped beside her. "I do. I was trained in the House of Life. I witnessed her healing. Her knowledge surpasses most priests." Another elder scoffed. "And yet you are in exile?" Menmaatre smiled. "Because I would not lie. Shall I do so now?" Silence fell. Nafraya stepped forward. "Ask my cousin why she accused me. Ask her what she feared." The council shifted uncomfortably. The cousin had left the city a month ago. Rumors said she was exposed in another temple scandal. The lead elder cleared his throat. "What would you have us do?" Nafraya's voice was steady. "Acknowledge your wrong. Restore my name. Let those who hear the wind know it was not guilt that buried me, but fear." No verdict was given that day, but as she and Menmaatre left the hall, the people of Waset parted for her. Not out of respect yet, but out of recognition. She was no longer the girl in the sand. She had returned from death and demanded to be heard. 3 days passed before the elder summoned her again. Word had spread like wildfire through Waset of the girl who returned from the desert, of the hunter who stood with her, of accusations unburied and truth demanding air. The trial would be public, not out of fairness, but spectacle. The city fed on drama like jackals fed on the dead. Nafraya stood in the temple courtyard, where once sacrifices were made to honor Ra. The stone floor was hot beneath her sandals, but her spine was straight. Citizens gathered, nobles, scribes, temple maidens, market vendors, all drawn by the scent of scandal. Menmaatre stood behind her again, silent, but his presence was a shield. The lead elder raised a ceremonial staff. "Nafraya, daughter of Pazer the scribe, you were cast into exile for suspected betrayal. You return now to challenge that decree. Do you claim innocence still?" She lifted her chin. "I never stopped." A ripple moved through the crowd. One by one, the elders questioned her on her supposed meetings with priests, on her cousin's accusation, on why she had fled rather than face trial. "I didn't flee," she replied. "I was dragged. Before sunrise, before judgment, before Ma'at was even named." The crowd murmured. Her father sat pale and sweating, wringing his hands. Then Menmaatre stepped forward, producing a sealed tablet, his record of her healing, signed with the mark of the House of Life. "She has treated the sick, healed the wounded, revived the forgotten. I stake my name on her innocence and her worth." A hush fell. One of the elders, younger and less rigid, asked, "Would you serve the temple if cleared?" Nafraya looked around. "I will not return to silence. I will heal. But not here. Not under these walls." A dramatic pause followed. Then, the lead elder finally spoke. "Your exile is lifted. Your name restored. The shame lies not with you, but with those who feared your light." The crowd was stunned. A few clapped. A few turned away in shame. Her father tried to approach, but Nafraya stopped him with a glance soft but distant, not unkind, but firm. She had returned for truth, not reconciliation. That evening, as the sun fell behind the city's sandstone walls, Nafraya walked away from Waset once more, not cast out, but choosing exile. And for the first time, it felt like freedom. Nafraya and Menmaatre returned to the desert not as fugitives, but as legends. Along their journey back to the oasis, travelers stepped aside and bowed lightly, not from duty, but from awe. Children whispered her name, and elders nodded in silent respect. Word had moved faster than camels could carry it. The girl left to die had returned to demand truth and received it. When they arrived at the oasis, the palms swayed gently, as if welcoming her home. The spring bubbled softly, and the reeds rustled like a lullaby. It felt different now. Not just a refuge, but a sanctuary born of struggle. Nafraya stepped onto the familiar earth with bare feet and inhaled deeply. "This," she whispered, "is miles of herbs." Menmaatre taught her more about venom cures, spiritual remedies, the hidden energies of stones warmed in the sun. But now, she taught too. Young women from distant tribes came to study under her. Some brought stories like hers, cast out, abandoned, forgotten. Others brought only questions and empty hands. All were welcomed. One day, while tending to a wound on a traveler's leg, Nafraya paused. "If I had stayed in Waset, if they had married me off, I would have worn gold bracelets and served wine to men who never saw me." She looked up at Menmaatre. "But out here, I saved lives. I found mine." He nodded, silent, proud. That night, they sat by the fire with a circle of new voices. Girls laughed. A boy played a reed flute. A woman who had once tried to end her life now gathered dates and honey for tea. Nafraya looked around and felt it in her bones. She had not just survived the desert. She had become part of it. Its silence, its cruelty, its peace, it was all within her now. Menmaatre handed her a pendant, carved from desert wood, shaped like the eye of Ma'at. "It belongs to you," he said. "You did what kings fear. You told the truth and lived." Nafraya placed it around her neck, the firelight flickering in her eyes. In that moment, she was no longer the girl abandoned in the sand. She was the voice the wind carried, the healer of the forsaken, the flame of the forgotten. Years passed, and the oasis became more than a hidden refuge. It became a legend. Travelers from as far as Nubia and the Libyan border spoke of the Garden of the Chosen, where exiles found shelter, the sick found healing, and truth found breath again. At the heart of it all stood Nafraya, no longer the girl left to die, but a healer, a teacher, and a keeper of forgotten voices. The community she and Menmaatre built flourished. Children ran barefoot along the spring's edge. Women, once silent, now led chants of ancient prayers at dawn. The sick no longer feared being cast out. They came to be restored, and those who arrived with pain in their hearts were met not with pity, but with understanding. The oasis did not judge it, listened. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant cliffs and the sky turned copper red, a rider arrived, bearing a scroll. It bore the seal of Waset, now cracked and faded. It was an invitation, no, a plea. A plague had struck the inner quarters, and none of the city's priests could slow it. "They remember," Menmaatre said, reading over her shoulder. "They know what you are now." Nafraya said nothing for a long time. She walked to the edge of the spring and stared at her reflection. Not a child anymore. Not a victim. She was the wind-carved stone, the thorn that bloomed, the truth that refused to rot in silence. "I will go," she finally said. "But not to save the city. I go for those trapped in it, the ones like I once was." She traveled to Waset not with fear, but with an entourage of apprentices by her side, herbs packed in baskets, and her staff in hand. Crowds gathered in the streets, but this time they parted in reverence. Even the elders stood as she passed. Inside the temple, she treated the dying with the same calm strength she had once used on herself. And when the plague faded and peace returned, she left again without waiting for their praise. Back in the oasis, beneath a sky thick with stars, she whispered a promise to the wind. "No one else will be left behind. Not while I still breathe." And the wind, warm and knowing, carried her vow beyond the dunes into legend.